So that, that's sort of where we come from, and a bit of an insight to our data. I suppose the next question is, how can it help you? So I think we realized that, there was probably two key problems with youth soccer in the US. One is the amount of time that it takes you guys, or your parents or your coaches, to break your film down and to create those clips that you need for recruitment and for development. And the other is the recruitment system. Really, it's so inefficient. The college recruitment system in the US, where college scouts are having to travel enormous distances to maybe watch, short clips, 15 minutes of players at different games, or wade through 90 minutes of footage. It's just not an efficient way of doing recruitment. So a couple of years ago, we launched in the US to try and help young soccer players with their development and their recruitment. And we brought exactly the same method of data collection that we used in the professional game. We brought exactly the same analysis model. But instead of using it to identify transfer targets, we're trying to help players get recruited with colleges and with clubs. And we're trying to help players and coaches use video analysis to improve their game. So yeah, that's kind of the overview on us and our data. Jamie now is going to give you a bit of a high-level run-through the platform, and then at the end, I'm going to sort of have a quick look at a surf center forwards profile to give you, a bit of insight as to what sort of analysis I would be doing on a profile.
Thank you, Paul. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can now, yeah.
Perfect. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So as Paul said, we've been analysing games now for a number of years in the US, and on our Taka.io platform, which you can all go to and sign up for, and indeed some of you will already have profiles for. We have over 26,000 youth games in the States analysed. And off the back of that, as Paul highlighted, we've taken over 6.5 million individual video highlights and data points. So what we're doing for every game, again, like Paul said, our analysts are spending 4 or 5 hours breaking down every game. All of the games are uploaded onto the Taka profile. We capture the goal scores, we capture the score of the game. And then for coaches and players, we want to make it really, really easy for you to understand what has happened in the game. So alongside the full game footage, we provide game highlights. So these are the top rated actions that have happened throughout the game for both sides. And they typically form, 4 to 6 minutes of highlights. So you can quite quickly, as a coach or as a player or as a parent, understand what happened in the game and see the key events. We then do the same for the key attacking and defensive plays for both the home and the away team. And we make sure that the rosters of the teams that played all show underneath, again, because what we want to make it really easy for people to do is understand who's played in the game. And if they are, for example, one of the 1,500 college recruiters that are active on our site, they can quickly click on the player's name and be taken to their profile. So what every player then gets, as I've just mentioned, is a dedicated player profile. So we then, it's unhelpful, log me out, I'll log back in here. We create individual profiles for every single player that they're then able to go on to and customize and add all of their own information to. So if I look, for example, at wingbacks, and we go into Nico Perez, for example. So Nico's gone in, he's added his profile photo, he's added information about his height, his dominant foot. He could go in and add a bio. In this case, he has committed to college. So he's committed to go to Cornell, which is fantastic. And he'll be going there in 2026. But then what he gets automatically after having set up his profile are all of his key clips after every game he's played being pushed to his profile. So you can see here, he played against Diablo Valley on the 29th of March, and Taka has provided him with his 17 key clips. Same for the the 22nd of March. He's getting his 19 clips, and you can see here, and Paul will go into more detail on this in a second. What we're doing is we're saying, well, what was the skill that was being exhibited? Was it positive? Was it negative? And it all gets categorized. That then gives the player or the parent or the college recruiter the ability to drill into that in a little bit more detail. So, looking at on the ball things specifically, as Paul mentioned, one of our key aspects that we look at in the game is not just on the ball but off the ball intelligence. So you can drill into that in more detail. And then also what we're doing for every single action is we're marking where it's happening on the pitch. So when we look at by location, what you'll see, unsurprising for a left wing back, all of his actions, both positive and negative, are happening down the left-hand side of the pitch. So, if I want to go in and look at things that I, as a player or a player that I'm coaching, are doing well, I can focus just on the positives. If I want to focus on my development, I can just drill into the negatives, and then again, I can filter that by attack or defense, or I can just look at the highly significant actions. So if I click on this one, by way of example, what we'd expect to see is something fairly negative. And in the same way as Gary and Paul's example, what we do for every clip is we pause and highlight the player so that everyone knows who we're looking at. So we should see the video pause and the player get highlighted before the action then unfolds. So we're effectively bringing the same level of professional analysis that Paul and Gary have just done at the start of the webinar for every kid. And we're making this available for every kid in Surf Nation. The reason the clips can be slightly longer is we're very keen to make sure that players and parents have the full game context, so understanding what has happened before and after the action in question. So here's the player in question, has been highlighted like we talked about. And what has happened there is they've just completely switched off and their runners got in behind them, and it's resulted in a big chance which could very easily have been a goal. So that's the key features of the player profile. And now I believe Paul is going to drill into a Surf player and their profile in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, cheers, Jimmy. Thanks. So very quickly, guys, this is the last thing I want to do. So one of the Surf Centre forwards, Jacob Galvin, has kindly agreed to let us use his profile as an example. There was lots of excellent profiles whenever we were looking through, but he's got lots and lots of clips, and the quality of his actions are absolutely excellent. So if you can see here, whenever I first open his profile, we have by game, by skill, as Jamie said, but where I sort of find the most useful sort of place to go for analysis is the by location view. And whenever I first open it up, it's a bit of a mess initially with, all of his data for the season there. But, if I'm a coach or recruiter at a glance, that definitely tells me about the type of centre forward he is. There's a high density of actions in and around the box, but he does obviously a lot of good work in deeper areas too. We can see all of these big green actions here indicating, high value positive actions. So, you have this series of filters across the top, which, we can use to do some pretty useful analysis. And if we keep an eye on the numbers, so these numbers sort of keep account of the positive and the negative and the attacking and the defensive actions that are displayed at any time here. So we'll see for Jacob, he's got 280, so he's got like 5 times more positive actions than negative ones. So that's obviously exceptionally good. So one of the quickest and easiest ways to filter this down is the high impact filter. If I quickly click this, it immediately takes me to the most impactful actions across the season, both positive and negative. And Jacob's are overwhelmingly positive here. So I can see all of those high value actions, and if I click on one of them, we should see him doing something outstanding. Picks the ball up here, stands the defender up, goes past him. Good shot on target, forces a good save from the goalkeeper. And maybe one of the sort of actions deeper in the half, deeper in his own half. Okay, again, picks the ball up with his back to goal, turns the defender, through with the goalkeeper, and an outstanding finish there. So that's a sort of quick and easy way if you want to, access your best clips that you want to share with friends or with recruiters or, with your coach, or even just, to review the key moments of your season. That's a really quick and easy way to do it. But beyond that, if you want to dig a bit deeper, there's lots and lots of ways that you can filter your clips down. But I think probably one of the most useful things for me, there's two simple ways. One is by game. So if I go in here, I have a full list of all of the games that Jacob's played across the season. So, you could go through that if you wanted to look at your games against specific types of opponents, if you know who the better opponents are or who the weaker opponents are, or maybe opponents who play with a high line defensively, or maybe opponents that like to play with a low block. You can mix up the different fixtures that you want to look at, and you can analyze your performance in different groups of games. One of the things that I looked at earlier, I've preloaded this, is to do a comparison between his first 6 games of the season, which we can see represented over here, which I just filtered down using the fixture filters, and his most recent 6 games of the season, which we can see over here. And you can see here, there's a really stark difference. Although if I look up here, the number of positive actions and the number of negative actions aren't actually all that different. The location of where he's completing these actions, there's loads of high value actions in and around the box in the last 6 games, whereas at the beginning of the season, it's the high quality actions tend to be in much deeper areas, and that might be just a positional difference, or a coach instruction. But I think it's interesting to be able to visually represent the data this way, so you can see at a glance the way that his game has been different across those games. So that's by game. The other way that I think is really useful to filter this is by skill. So we can go in here and we've got a list of skill categories. Now, at the minute, this isn't particularly brilliant. This is something that we're working on at the minute, and we need to improve this for next season, because this is quite generic, because we've tried to make it apply to all positions. But if you're a striker, what you're interested in is, your movement off the ball, your shooting, your dribbling, your crossing, your defending, your link-up play. So we want to try and make these more specific to strikers or midfielders or defenders, or depending on where you play. But at the minute, you can still, get some good insight with this, with what we have. So if I was to filter this down to shots, it will sort of quickly just freeze off the rest of the actions and leave the shots that he's had this season. So if I was to look at one of these actions here, we'll pick him up. Pressures a defender here, steals the ball, and then very direct, drives at the defence, goes past another couple of players, hits the crossbar, so the finish is almost perfect. If we look at maybe one more, so again, breaking from deep, steals the ball, and then this is all pace and power. Just drives forward with full intensity. Doesn't need to beat the man, just shifts it and drills it into the bottom corner. So exceptional finish. But one of the things I think is most interesting to look at is if I filter this to intelligence, this is going to show me a lot of what's happening off the ball. And I think that this can be really interesting. If we look at the first example, this is quite a short clip. See, the goalkeeper plays the ball out to the left back, and we pick Jacob up in the middle of the park. So the ball's travelling across to the left back here. Jacob's in the middle of the park. Defender is in the centre back's in a good position that he can close Jacob down if he needs to. The opposition right back is closing the guy that's about to receive the ball. So the defence are pretty well set to defend this. But what we'll see, if we just watch Jacob here, we're going to see him make a run into this space. So he recognises the space behind the fullback and he drives into it at absolutely 100% intensity here. And what you see is, the ball doesn't get played. So, you can see he's frustrated that the ball hasn't been played. But if I go back slightly, we'll see that from a very tight situation, whenever his left back is about to receive the ball, by making this run, both defenders have been attracted to the run. And all of a sudden, the space is opened up for the left back to play forward. Now, in this occasion, the touch isn't quite right and he ends up coming inside. But, he does create space for him with that run. What we'll also see, because he attracts both the centre half and the right back here, if we let it play on, we'll also see that, look at the amount of space that has been developed in the middle of the park for this guy. If he's able to play that pass forward, that just opens up a whole opportunity for a counter-attack. So, from Jacob's point of view with that run, he's probably going to be frustrated for a couple of seconds and then he'll forget about it and, he'll move on. His coach might not even see it because he's trying to do 1,000 other things. But through his Taka profile, we can capture that and he can watch that back and he can see that, it wasn't a wasted effort. There was value to that run and the intensity that he makes it with that developed space for his teammates. And on another day, even if he doesn't get that pass, this could develop into an attack for his team, and he will have played a really important role for that, despite not having any contact with the ball. Another clip, just very quickly, very similar one. We'll see here as the ball's played forward. This is Jacob here. He's trying to stretch the defence here. Pass isn't on, so it gets played wide to the left. And if we just watch him here, he identifies the space and he's going to make a similar run again into this channel. And again, the crucial thing is it's done with 100% intensity. And what that means is that the centre back and the midfielder here, they don't have time to pass him on. They don't have time to organise themselves. They have to react quickly and they end up both tracking the run. Again, the pass is slightly overhit. Doesn't really come to anything. So it'd be easy to become frustrated by that and think it was a wasted effort. But again, if we go back and we look at what's happening here behind him in the box, we can see that because he's attracted the two defenders with him, they have an overload in the box here, a 2v1 in a really, really important situation. And if that ball at this point can be played into the box, or even if the pass is slightly better and Jacob is able to make the cutback, that could be a really dangerous situation that's developed as a result of that run. The last one then is, let me think. I think it's this one. Yeah, so this is where he gets the payoff. It's a similar situation. Ball's bouncing around in midfield. We'll see Jacob here. I think he'll be circled in a minute. Yeah. The defender's in a good position to defend this goal side. But as soon as the ball breaks, we'll see Jacob's reaction compared to the defender. He reacts that split second faster because he's switched on and he's anticipating things. And we'll just see the difference that quick reaction makes. It gets him that 2 yard. It gets him that head start, which is a forward. That makes all the difference for you guys, particularly if it's in the box, where it can be the difference between a defender getting his toe to the ball or the centre forward poking it in for a goal. So it's that anticipation, it's that reaction, and then it's that urgency. We see that 100% intensity again with the drive. And this time he gets his reward and he's through on goal. And it goes down for the penalty. So, what we see is that's the same run that he made in the two previous examples. He's just getting the payoff there. So I suppose, what we hope that we can bring with Taka and the profiles is the recognition, that if you're a player analysing your own game, what might seem like wasted effort when you're making these runs, whenever you watch it back, you can actually see that you're making a difference to your team. You're developing space for others. You'll create more goal scoring opportunities. And that, I think that's one of the things that, you could challenge yourself, in the next. It's not really important what your profile looks like today. The way I think of it is, It's more important what your profile looks like after the next game or after the next month or at the end of the season. And can you challenge yourself to, can I get 6, 8, 10 of these off-ball runs in the next game? That can really make a difference. And you're not just doing it to get green circles on your Taka profile. You're doing it because you can see the evidence that is what makes a difference. That's what develops opportunities for you. It's what develops space for your teammates. And ultimately, by doing that, you'll score more goals and your team will win more games, which is